In this three-part series, we explore the history of independent film through 6 groundbreaking successes. Films that didn't just make money, they changed what was possible. These are stories of risk, innovation, and belief. What is an indie film? An independent film is, at its core, freedom. Freedom from studios, freedom from expectations, freedom to fail, but also freedom to create something new. Without that freedom, many of the films we're about to explore would never exist. Now, to understand indie films, we have to go way back. Before indie film became a movement, there was an underdog. A struggling actor writes a script about a boxer who gets one shot. He refuses to sell it unless he can star in it. The budget is small, the schedule is tight, but the story is universal. A nobody fighting for respect. It's America's bicentennial, 1976, and Rocky hits theaters on a budget of $960,000. The film has a worldwide gross of over $117 million. The film has garnered multiple awards, including Golden Globe, Best Motion Picture, DGA Award, Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Motion Pictures, Oscar for Best Director, Oscar for Best Film Editing, Oscar for Best Picture.
Congratulations.
The film becomes a phenomenon and proves something powerful. Even a small film can become legendary. And as we all know, Sylvester Stallone took that ball and ran with it. Now let's set the tone for indie films. There's no place better to start than with a rebel vision. In the world of independent cinema, few names carry the same mythic weight as Robert Rodriguez. A filmmaker, musician, editor, cinematographer, and storyteller, Rodriguez didn't just break into Hollywood. He kicked the door down with a homemade camera, a rebellious spirit, and a philosophy that would inspire generations of indie filmmakers. His story is not just one of success, it is a blueprint, a challenge, a declaration that filmmaking belongs to anyone bold enough to try. In 1992, Robert Rodriguez made El Mariachi for just $7,000. The number itself has become a legend, but the story behind it matters even more. Rodriguez funded the film in part by volunteering for medical research studies. He used non-professional actors, borrowed equipment, and improvised solutions to problems that would stop most productions cold. A guitar case became a prop. A town became a set. Limitations became creative fuel. Now, what El Mariachi proved was revolutionary. You didn't need millions of dollars to tell a compelling story. You needed resourcefulness. When the film won the Audience Award at Sundance and was later acquired by Columbia Pictures, it shattered the long-held belief that independent filmmakers had to, quote, wait their turn. Rodriguez didn't wait. He made his own opportunity. Now, Robert Rodriguez didn't just make films. He documented how he made them. His book, Rebel Without a Crew, became a manifesto for aspiring filmmakers. In it, he outlined his now famous philosophy. Creativity, not money, is used to solve problems. This idea became foundational to indie filmmaking culture. Robert Rodriguez encouraged filmmakers to wear multiple hats, directing, shooting, editing, composing, long before it became common practice in the digital age. He rejected the traditional studio hierarchy, proving that a filmmaker could retain control over their work by learning every part of the process. Today, this approach is standard among indie creators, YouTubers, digital storytellers, but Rodriguez was one of the first to champion it on a large scale. As some may know, Robert Rodriguez was also an early adapter of digital filmmaking. While many directors clung to traditional film, he embraced new technology as a democratizing force. With films like Once Upon a Time in Mexico and later with Sin City, he demonstrated how digital cameras, green screens, and non-linear editing could dramatically lower production costs while expanding creative possibilities. Now, this shift had a ripple effect across the industry. Digital filmmaking removed barriers. Suddenly, aspiring directors didn't need access to expensive film stock or studio infrastructure. They needed a camera and a vision. Robert Rodriguez didn't just follow the digital revolution, he helped to lead it. Unlike many indie filmmakers who transitioned fully into the studio system, Rodriguez carved out his own space within that system. He founded Troublemaker Studios in Austin, Texas, far from Hollywood's traditional power centers. Then he built a creative hub where he could produce films on his own terms. This move reinforced another key lesson. Independence isn't just about budgets, it's about control. Rodriguez proved that filmmakers could operate outside the Hollywood machine while still achieving commercial success. His films, from Desperado to Spy Kids, combined indie ingenuity with mainstream appeal. He didn't abandon his roots, he expanded them. The influence of Robert Rodriguez can be seen across decades of filmmaking. His success helped legitimize the idea that indie films could be commercially viable. His methods inspired filmmakers to pick up cameras, start creating, without waiting for permission. Directors across genres cite his work ethic, his DIY philosophy, and his willingness to experiment as major influences. His approach also foreshadowed the rise of content creators in the digital age. Individuals who produce, edit, and distribute their own work independently. In many ways, Rodriguez predicted the future of filmmaking before the tools even existed. Today, independent filmmaking is more accessible than ever. Smartphones shoot in 4K, editing software is widely available, distribution platforms are global. The core philosophy that drives indie filmmaking, the belief that anyone can tell a story with the tools they have, can be traced back to pioneers like Robert Rodriguez. His legacy is not just in the films he made, but in the doors he opened. He showed that limitations are not obstacles, they are opportunities. That creativity thrives under pressure. The most powerful tool a filmmaker has is not money, but determination. Robert Rodriguez, the rebel without a crew, didn't just make movies, he rewrote the rules. And in doing so, he gave a generation of filmmakers permission to do the same. Join us for part 2 as we explore 2 of the biggest indie films and influences of the 1990s. Hey, welcome back to the rise of the indie film giants. We're looking at 6 breakthrough films that changed independent filmmaking forever. Hey, what are you waiting for? Grab your concessions, some popcorn, a cold drink. Let's roll the film. Today, in part 2 of our 3-part series, we start off with a film that feels indie by a director that embodies indie, but in reality, he wasn't going to be indie for very long. It would be impossible. But what is certain is the influence and impact the film would have on filmmaking. Stallone laid the groundwork for the indie revolution, and nearly 2 decades later, indie film evolved. One auteur led the way, beginning with rewinding and recommending, to then writing and then making films. Films where stories became fragmented, dialogue becomes sharp, violence becomes art. Pulp Fiction. This film doesn't follow rules. It bends time, it bends genres, it demands attention. Audiences respond. Pulp Fiction had 69 award wins and 72 nominations, including 7 Oscar nominations and 1 win for Best Original Screenplay, and the highly regarded Palme d'Or Award in 1994 at the Cannes Film Festival. The film was released into theaters on October 14, 1994, and was written by Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary, directed by Quentin Tarantino and produced by Lawrence Bender. It was a star-studded production, featuring comeback performances from John Travolta and Bruce Willis, whose latest film was voicing a baby in a John Travolta movie about a talking baby. The ensemble also included Samuel L. Jackson, Tim Roth, Uma Thurman, Rosanna Arquette, Ving Rhames, and so many more. This was great casting. On a budget of $8 million, it ended up with a worldwide gross of over $213 million. Very nice box office. It becomes a cultural landmark and opens the door for bold, unconventional storytelling. But listen, there would be no landmark movie without its predecessor. The truer independent of the two films hit the big screen 2 years earlier. That stepping stone would be Reservoir Dogs. In 1992, the filmmaker/video store clerk Quentin Tarantino releases his indie crime thriller with another great cast and the help of Harvey Keitel. On a budget of $1.2 million, the opening weekend was not great. It made less than $150,000.
Awkward!
It was not a big hit. But overall, they made the budget back. The worldwide gross would be $2.9 million. Not only did the film provide a launching pad for the young filmmaker, but more importantly, it paid enough for Tarantino to go away and finish writing the screenplay for Pulp Fiction, which would have an everlasting effect on filmmaking. The DIY revolution was about to get an injection. The same year that Tarantino drops his second film, a very different film emerges. Shot in black and white, set in a convenience store, funded on credit cards, this film doesn't look polished. It doesn't try to be. Instead, it feels real. 2 store clerks talk about life, work, relationships, and everything in between. No spectacle, no grand plot, just conversation. And that's exactly why it matters. Clerks, 1994, was filmed in the convenience store in which Kevin Smith worked. He shot most of the film at night after the store closed. After winning the highest award at the Sundance Film Festival, Miramax brought it to theaters. The film was shot on a budget of $27,000. From personal credit cards and selling a comic book collection, which Smith would later buy back. The film made its budget back on opening weekend with $31,665 and going on to gross over $3 million worldwide. It won a few awards as well. Among its awards, in 1994, Clerks won Award of the Youth for Foreign Film and the Mercedes-Benz Award at the Cannes Film Festival. And in 2019, Clerks won National Film Registry by the National Film Preservation Board and has been added by the Library of Congress. Now, for those of you who may have seen the film, did you know the smoker's lung that the Chulies gum rep slams on the counter is actually a calf's liver thrown in dirt and burned with cigarettes? That's Berserker. This film sends a message louder than any blockbuster. You may not have millions of dollars. You may not have the most cinematic locations. But if you have something to say, you can do it from anywhere, even a store counter. I think it's safe to say that indie films has had a Kevin Smith era. The success of the film sparks something bigger. A new kind of filmmaker emerges, one who writes, directs, and speaks directly to their audience. Stories become more personal, dialogue becomes the focus, characters feel like people you know. A small, connected universe begins to grow. Films are linked by tone, characters, and voice. The era isn't about spectacle, it's about authenticity, and it inspires a generation. Filmmakers who pick up cameras not because they have resources, but because they have stories. Kevin Smith would go on to produce, direct, write, and appear on camera, building an impressive resume of over 150 credits. He made film sequels to Clerks and several spin-offs with characters, mostly Jay and Silent Bob. His other films, such as Mallrats, Chasing Amy, and Dogma, all intercept in some way. He was creating the first cinematic universe long before the big studio. Although his second feature film, Mallrats, was a flop with an $8 million budget, it found its audience on video release and cable television. It's now another classic with a cult following by Kevin Smith. The era spurred future indie filmmakers in a variety of genres. We would witness a series of great indie films hit the market and launch some tremendous careers. In 1995, we were treated to Party Girl with a budget of just over $150,000 by director Daisy von Schreller-Meyer and starring a young Parker Posey, the future indie queen herself. 1996, we saw Swingers on a budget of $200,000 and a worldwide gross of $4.5 million, launched careers for Jon Favreau, Doug Liman, and Vince Vaughn. Also in 1996, we saw Suburbia from director Richard Linklater, who also brought us Dazed and Confused in 1993, and before that, Slacker in 1990, which actually inspired Kevin Smith to make his film independently. Slacker's budget, by the way, $23,000. The DIY approach is real. The filmmaker's experience often run parallel from the budget to the process. These are just a few examples of independent films that were inspired by the same desire to tell stories on their own terms. It didn't stop in the 2000s. Horror comedy introduced Hatchet in 2006 by writer-director Adam Green on a budget of $1.5 million. It did terrible in the theater. It did terrible in the theater, grossing just over $208,000 worldwide. But the age of streaming tells a different story. There would be Hatchet 2, again by Adam Green, released in 2010 for a budget of $7.8 million. Did even worse at the box office. It did terrible.
Awkward.
Grossing just over $156,000 worldwide. Well, guess what? There would also be a Hatchet 3 in 2013 and Victor Crowley in 2017. By the way, Victor Crowley was the main character. He's the guy with the hatchet. And that had a budget of $400,000, so the budget dropped a whole lot. But things were evolving in the world of indie filmmaking. Of course, you can't get to the 2000s until you get through 1999. What happened in the year of the Y2 glitch?
And do you have any final advice for film students?
I mean, it's a hard process. Don't worry about failing. Through that failure is ultimately what leads you to your own Blair Witch.
Hey, welcome back to the rise of the indie film giants. So far, we've covered 4 different films that have had major impact on independent filmmaking. The final 2 films we're talking about have established a subgenre, defied box office, and paved a lane for low-budget filmmakers
everywhere.
I'm real excited about this. Thank you for
I'm
the
very
opportunity.
glad.
There were no logos, no fanfare, just acclaim that felt real. The Blair Witch Project. Before audiences ever sat down, they were already inside the story.
The found footage formula was more propaganda, less polish. It was marketing, it was hype, it was old school word of mouth, and way too much shaky cam. No stars, no studio safety net, and no marketing budget worth mentioning.
So they did what Gautomatic would do. They took their limitations and turned them into weapons. No polish, no gloss, just something that felt true. They didn't sell a movie, they built a myth. A website, simple, crude, presented everything as fact. Documents, interviews, history. No wink to the audience. Nothing about it said, hey, this is fiction.
The thing is, you weren't being advertised to, you were investigating. And that's the shift. The actors disappeared. Not metaphorically, on paper, online, everywhere. They were gone. No interviews, no press tours, no breaking character, because once you break it, you lose it.
They were asked to stay out of sight until the film dropped. Is this real? Is this real? That question did more work than any ad campaign ever could. Now keep in mind, this was 1999. This was the early internet. This was dial-up. There's no algorithms, there's no fact-checking culture, just people sharing what they felt. This became water cooler talk. They didn't push the story, they let the audience pull it into their own world. That's Gautomatic energy. You don't chase the attention. You create something people can't ignore. And that's what they were doing. This was one of the most brilliant marketing campaigns ever.
How far would they take this lie? All the way. They even backed it up with a fake documentary, presenting more evidence, more context, no cracks. There were no cracks in the illusion.
Every piece said the same thing. This really happened. This is happening. This happened. Now, by release day, the marketing was over because the audience had already done the work. They showed up, not for entertainment, but for confirmation. On an initial budget of only $35,000, the box office was $248 million. The numbers are in. That's not luck. That's execution. A low-budget film that outperformed the system by refusing to play inside of that system. Now, the final budget would be around $60,000, but with a box office of $248 million, no matter how you cut it, no matter how you slice it, that's a lot of money. That's impressive.
Impressive.
Now, here's the truth. They didn't just market a film. They created belief. And belief is scalable. That's the blueprint. Not bigger budgets, not louder ads, just realer ideas. More real ideas, ideas that are realer. Just keep it real.
It does have a lot of mystique to it, and people want to see what it's all about, and seeing it on the big screen's a lot of fun. The marketing campaign has its own sort of like level of mystique, and a lot of it was helped out by John Pierce. Blair Witch sort of represents this point in our history where, internet was coming into its own, reality TV was sort of coming into its own. We all like certain aspects of that whole kind of mythology. And
there has to be a commitment to the illusion. There has to be respect for the audience and the discipline to never break the world you build. So the real lesson here is,
if it feels real, It is.
No movement, no music, no escape, just time, and the feeling that something is wrong.
Now, where the Blair Witch Project used chaos, Paranormal Activity, they used control.
Locked cameras, fixed perspectives, long takes. It didn't chase fear, it waited for you to find it. Made for around $15,000, the film didn't look professional. That was the point.
It looked like something you could film yourself, which meant it could happen to you.
Now, the marketing didn't focus on the film, it focused on the audience. Instead of showing the horror, they showed people experiencing it.
And that is, the shift. It's the shift again.
You're not watching a trailer, you're watching proof. You're looking at evidence right here. Now, this wasn't a wide release, it was a test. Audiences had to demand the film come to their city. Every vote became marketing. Every request became proof of hype. They turned distribution into participation. Let me repeat that.
They turned distribution into participation.
Much like the Blair Witch Project, the real engine wasn't ads, it was people. Every time someone told a friend, I couldn't sleep after that. Or they said, that felt real. That's all it took. On a budget of $15,000, box office of $193 million, a micro-budget film becoming a global phenomenon. Not by being bigger, but by being closer. Okay, so here's the difference. The Blair Witch Project made you believe the footage was real. Paranormal Activity made you feel like it was happening right now. That's evolution. Same foundation, different execution. For Gautomatic, the lesson is simple. Don't just show something real. Create an experience the audience can project themselves into, because the closer it feels, the harder it hits. And the truth is this: the scariest thing is when it feels possible. It's not easy to affect an industry overnight, but some of these films have done exactly that. What connects these films? They took risks. They broke rules. They embraced limitations and turned them into strengths. But perhaps most importantly, they changed who gets to tell stories. From underdog athletes to hitmen and philosophers, to clerks behind the counter, to filmmakers in the woods.
Independent cinema proves something extraordinary. The great stories don't belong to studios. They belong to anyone brave enough to tell them. And somewhere right now, someone with nothing but an idea might be creating the next story that introduces the new era of independent film. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed looking at a few independent films that made a big difference in the independent film movement. See you next time. Lights,